rise again. He said this quite openly, and Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But turning and looking at his disciples, Jesus rebuked Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan, for you are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things." He called the crowd with his disciples and said to them, "If any want to be my followers, let them deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake and for the sake of the gospel will save it. For what will it profit them to gain the whole world and forfeit their life? Indeed, what can they give in return for their life? Those who are ashamed of me and of my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of them the Son of Man will also be ashamed when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
May the words of my mouth and the meditation of our hearts be always acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen.
Amen.
As I was thinking about the service today, and I thought there's so many things at the start of a time together as a priest to share, and I have these readings. I always love it when I don't like the readings because they challenge me. What struck me first of all with the Old Testament reading is we're told that Abram was 99 years old and he's going to have a child. And his wife, who was not quite as old, but almost as old, is also, after years of not being able to have children, going to have a child. And it strikes me that this is a rather impossible thing to literally believe. And yet, how often that is exactly what we call people to do. Well, if you're going to really be a person of faith, then you must believe this. You must not question. So as I pondered, I thought, you know, in the time, first of all, Abraham lived about 1,000 years before the story of Abraham got written down. A lot of time passes between the time of Abraham and the time that his story is written down. And so the 99 years is easy to question whether they might have gotten some numbers wrong there. Also, I know enough about the background of the Old Testament times that I know they didn't have the same concept of time and of years as we modern, quote, quote, people do. And so that Abraham was older than you would expect, that Sarah was older than you would expect, is reasonable. To say that he was actually 99 years old is pushing belief, for me at least. And even more importantly, it misses the whole point. It misses the whole point of the reading. Today's Genesis reading is the story of God creating a covenant between God and a group of people, the people that will be the offspring of Abraham. A covenant in which both parties agree to do certain things, but the difference between a covenant and a contract, by the way, is in a contract, if one person fails to uphold the contract is null and void. The other party can walk away and their responsibility is ended as well. In a covenant, when one side fails, the other side is still held to being responsible. And so, thank heavens, God creates covenants with us humans. Because if we're the least bit honest, we know we fail. We fail to live as Jesus would have us live. We fail to do the things that Jesus would have us do. And so God created a covenant with Abram. And one of the important clues here is, what is it that God does in both the case of Abram and Sarai? He changes their name. He names them Abraham and Sarah. And hopefully that connects with the New Testament when Cephas becomes, he's in today's gospel, Peter. Saul becomes Paul. The naming of a person is to lay claim on them, which is exactly why in baptism, the parents and godparents are asked to name this child, and the child is baptized with their first and middle names, not with their last name. They are claimed by Jesus to be named. And I think any of you from the Roman Catholic tradition maybe chose a confirmation name or first communion name, always a saint that had some sort of claim that something that you wanted to live up to. And indeed, in other cultures, in Indian cultures, a child is not named until someone sees a quality that they see in that child that they want to proclaim. And so God, in covenant, making a covenant, lays claim to Abraham and to us. And God promises Abraham he will be the father to many nations. Abraham is the common ancestor of the Jewish, Christian, and Islam religions. All of them hearken back to Abraham. Abraham's son, who will be born out of, after this story, Isaac, is the descendant, is the ancestor for the Jewish nation and the ancestor to Jesus. Ishmael, who was the child that was born earlier than this, when Sarah could not have children, was born to Sarah's slave, with Sarah willingly asking to do that. Ishmael becomes the father of the Muslim nation, of Islam. And so the important thing is not the age of Abraham, but rather is God acting, creating covenant, and calling forth a people that God will be faithful to all the way to this very day. In today's gospel reading, being Lent, we read of the fact that Jesus is explaining to his disciples, to those faithful people who have been called by name, Cephas becomes Peter, called by name to follow Jesus, that this is not an easy way. This is not a way that will be ensuring a good, happy life. Jesus explains what will happen to him. And Peter, like you and I, very quickly say, oh, no, 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 Jesus, don't do that. No, no, we've got to change the scenario. We can't have you be killed. And for that, Peter is told, get behind me, Satan, for you are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things. Peter gets it wrong, just like you and I so often get it wrong. And just like you and I so often focus on the wrong message, when we look in today's gospel, we are told to, if anyone wants to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. Now, I don't know about you, but I know in my family, we have certain relatives that we consider to be our crosses. That isn't what Jesus was talking about. That trivializes, just like seeking faith to be based on whether you literally believe Abraham is 99 years old. Saying, oh, somebody that bugs me is my cross, is to belittle the message of Jesus. Take up my cross, take up your cross and follow me. Take up those burdens, those trials that would seek to separate you from me. But follow me is Jesus' message. Jesus wants us to follow him in good times and in bad, through the pleasant times of our life, and most of all, through tough times. And as we sit here in our homes, gathered together via the computer after a year of dealing with this pandemic, the pandemic literally is a cross that we are bearing. How we respond, seeking to be safe and careful for ourselves and for others, is doing the work Jesus calls us to do. Recognizing how weary and confused and frightened every person is during this time, is to bear the cross, to understand and not become offended or upset when someone fails to respond as we think they might or should, but to bear understanding, to learn to be patient, to learn to forgive. During this season of Lent, we are asked to examine ourselves so that we can see where we're falling short, and we can change our lives to become more like Jesus. And as you and I travel together for some unknown period of time, because that's true for all people in all times, we will learn to bear each other's crosses. We will learn to accept each other's shortcomings, and we will learn to rejoice in each other's strengths, in each other's sense of humor, in each other's gifts. And so, as we begin our journey together during this Lenten season, we're invited to remember, to be patient, to be accepting, to be inclusive, and to seek always to follow Jesus. Amen.
Amen.